How do you build a squad for the World Cup? And just how do you manage it? What do we want to see from Scotland against Curacao? Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday the 28th of May. And the excitement is building for the World Cup. We're all still basking in the afterglow of qualification and ready for the big send-off on Saturday. But just how do you build a squad for a World Cup?
There's just a calmness, there's an understanding, right, we've been to 2 tournaments. The next step is to actually achieve something like that in a tournament. There's definitely a confidence there and a belief that we can get through the group. Who
are the characters you need and how do you manage them? Plus, we round up the big domestic news as a goalkeeper hangs up his gloves.
Kasper Schmeichel has announced his retirement this morning from football at the age of 39. The Celtic and Denmark goalie has been told he won't be able to fully recover from a serious shoulder injury.
We will keep you up to date with all things Scottish football.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And alongside me to chat all things Scotland, no better than 2 former Scotland internationals. Joelle Murray, former Scotland midfielder, finally ending her domestic season as Hibs women head coach. Joelle, are you finally getting a bit of a break?
No, is the short answer. We're in this week. We've got a couple of international players that we need to tick over ahead of them meeting up with the squad next week. So yes, we're certainly still working, Charlotte.
No rest for the wicked, eh?
Absolutely.
And alongside us, former Scotland fullback Robbie Neilson and newly promoted to the Belgian top flight with SK Lommel. Morning, Robbie. Congrats. Have you recovered from the celebrations?
Thanks, Charlotte. Yes, it was a great night over in sunny Lommel, that's for sure. So, yeah, it was great. Good experience, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Fun fact, between the two of you, you have 49 Scotland caps. I'll spare Robbie how many of them are his.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, let's talk Scotland because the squad finally together again ahead of the World Cup. Saturday's first match against Curacao, a send-off at Hampden. Robbie, how vital is it that Scotland get a win, a good performance to send us off to the World Cup as, in, I suppose, the best possible mindset?
Yeah, I think it's just the feel-good factor, to be honest with you, and I think it's a good game to take. It's a good team to play against. Hopefully, it's one that we would expect to win. It's one that we would expect to score some goals against as well. Hopefully, keep a clean sheet. Yeah, so I think it's a good opportunity for the fans to really get behind the players and get that feel-good factor going into the World Cup.
That's one of the big things, isn't it, Joelle, is that atmosphere at Hampden. It's going to be absolutely rocking, and what better way to G you up as a player than hearing all that noise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Robbie's hit the nail on the head there. I think a really good fixture to take to hopefully send the boys off and good spirits and obviously get the fans teed up for what's hopefully going to be an exciting summer. So yeah, having that game there at Hampden, hopefully in the sunshine or good weather at least. Scotland, you never know. But yeah, I think really, really good opportunity to get a good performance, a result, goals, and really just elevate that feel-good factor ahead of the competitive stuff in the summer.
And one of the big talking points about Scotland recently has obviously been the squad announcement. I wonder, Robbie, if you, knowing as a manager, what does it take to build a squad for a tournament? What kind of characters do you need and what kind of players do you need there and why?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions that Steve will have been asking and thinking about over the last probably month or two. You know, I think if it's a 26-man squad and the first port of call is, you know, what formations is he going to play and is he going to need? Because that kind of dictates the build-up of your squad. You know, I think we've got 10 defenders, 8 midfielders, 5 attackers. You know, so that tells us that he's probably the 10 defenders. He can switch between the 4 and the 5. And I think also within that you're looking at, the players that you're putting into the squad. We've got a few senior players within it, so you're probably going to need cover within that because of the turnaround of the game so quickly. So, can Robertson, can McGinn, guys like that, can they play the 3 games? Potentially not. So you're going to need cover within that. And then also you're looking at the team spirit, and within the group, and guys that have got us to championships before, guys that have got the experience. I think looking at that squad, that we've got 850 caps maybe within it. So you want that experience. And then another side of it, it's easy to manage the guys that are playing. The hardest part is keeping the guys that aren't playing happy and involved and energetic. So you then look at the build up, the build of that kind of group of players. Do you bring some young ones in? Cut is coming in, and there, Doak's in there. That brings a bit of energy to that group as well. So there's so many different aspects to look at. And I think that Steve has been very loyal to his players as well. It's one of the key things about him. This could potentially be his last tournament for Scotland, so he's kept that loyalty in that group together. So loads and loads of different things, and I think when you're building a squad like that, there's always going to be one or two that don't get in it, and people say they should have, but ultimately Steve's picked the squad, and we've all got to get behind him now.
I want to pick up on one of the things you pointed out there, Robbie, because it was interesting. The point about, keeping the people who probably aren't going to be playing happy. I wonder, Joelle, if you had any of experience of that back in 2019 about, there are good, it's a 26-man squad. You can't have 26 players on the pitch. How do you keep people who probably know they're not going to be getting as many minutes as they would want happy and motivated, and I suppose keeping the group together?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one for a manager, for a head coach, because people just first and foremost look at the performances on the pitch, the results on the pitch, but there's so much more to think about around that, that cohesion. And I was one of those players, 2017, 2019. I had to manage my own emotions first and foremost, so didn't get any minutes at those tournaments. And obviously there is that individual and internal disappointment and frustration. And look, it differs between players. I felt like I managed it okay. You're never going to be happy about going to tournaments and not taking to the pitch, but I think I managed it okay. But there'll be players that don't. There'll be players that need those older, more experienced heads to put an arm around a shoulder and really put things into perspective. So yeah, it's difficult, and it will be difficult for Steve Clarke, because I'd imagine there'll be moments across the tournament for those players that aren't getting minutes, but he's got the ability in himself to manage that, and like Robbie touched upon, there are experienced players within that squad that can certainly identify those players in those kind of weaker moments and those kind of darker moments, and really put an arm around a shoulder. So yeah, it's things that fans probably don't initially think about, but it certainly will be a big part of the camp and the tournament itself.
How difficult was that then to kind of, I suppose, turn up every day and put all the work in when you're maybe not getting the rewards that you would want from that?
Yeah, it's difficult, and I guess for me, it didn't get easier, because like I said, you train all week to get your rewards on a match day, but I think with age, you learn to put it more into perspective. I'm massive on controlling the controllables. So for me, I knew as long as I came away from every single training, every single meeting, and gave as best I could, then that for me was peace of mind. And then it was over to the head coach, to the manager, to then make that uncontrollable decision. So it is difficult, because personally, of course, you want to step onto the pitch, especially in tournaments like these. But I think you need to look bigger picture. And I was able, as I say, the more mature I got, the older I got, to put it into perspective and think about that bigger picture of, I'm here, I'm one of a very small group of people who's privileged enough to be in this position. So I was able to put that into perspective, whilst also still being disappointed and frustrated internally.
Yeah, I mean, mentality will be a big thing for these Scotland players out in America. One of the interesting things, we had Ray Bradshaw on the podcast last week, and he has done a lot of work with the Scotland squad, and he talked about players like Liam Kelly who are well loved within the group and are, probably not going to get as many minutes as he would want at the tournament, but everybody loves him. He's a great guy to have around the dressing room, really builds people up. Robbie, how vital is it then to have people like that? Because it seems like Steve Clarke has struck quite a good balance with having players in there who are there to, I suppose, be almost cheerleaders in the dressing room.
Yeah, I think they're very, very important. It's Joelle was touching on there. The characters within the group, especially the people that aren't getting the game time that they would like. Like Kelly's going to the World Cup, probably not going to play. But he's going along because he's going to train really well. He's going to have a great character. He's going to be good about the place. He's probably a person that interacts with a lot of the different players. And they're so important because they keep the team together. You see so many teams going to championships and they're going in as favourites or second favourites, and after the group stages they blow up internally. And it's the head coach has got such an important role to play. I wasn't lucky enough to go to a tournament, but I went to lots and lots of camps, and I was always either on the bench or in the stand, and I kind of knew that before I was going to go. But Walter Smith was a manager most of the time I was there, and he was phenomenal because his communication with the guys that weren't playing and probably knew they weren't going to play was really good, and he kept them engaged. And I think that's the key. It's like keeping these guys engaged will keep the group together. And I think guys like Liam Kelly know their position within the squad, and that's the key. Like a lot of big nations, like I said, they've got 26 guys who all think they should start and all want to start, and that's when you get a problem. When everyone knows where they are within the hierarchy, then it becomes a lot easier for the manager and the rest of the coaches, because you probably look at the Scotland squad and you could probably pick 7 or 8 that are going to start the first game. Then you've probably got another 5 or 6 that might start the first game, and then you've got another 10 that will not start the first game. So these 10 aren't going to have to be really good characters because they have to support everyone else. So yeah, the balance of the squad is so important, and having characters like Liam Kelly in there that know where they are is vital.
What about, Joelle, when you're at a tournament? I mean, it must be so intense and so overwhelming, particularly at a World Cup. What do players do to keep sane, keep themselves relaxed outside of training and match days?
Yeah, I think that is massively important. I think for us, 2017, the Euros was an eye-opener, and then 2019 and France was levels above that. So that for us as a nation, as players, was a first. And I think when you have a lot of firsts in your career, you don't really know what to expect, how to manage moments, manage emotions. So there'll be a lot of firsts like that in this group. So I think going with the kind of experienced players who have been there, done it, maybe not so much played World Cups, but played big games across their careers, I think leaning on them is important, because I think remaining balanced, keeping a level head out with training, out with match days, keeping a focus is crucial, because it can become quite intense. You can get fully consumed in it. So having coping mechanisms, having things to kind of reset your mind, take your focus away from football for a moment is important. And look, a squad full of professional players, regardless of age, they'll be going across there knowing what they're going to do in their downtime, how they're going to manage those moments, how they're going to take their focus away from football, because you need to, because it does consume you. So yeah, regardless of age or experience, I'm sure they will all be going over there knowing what they're going to do in those periods of downtime, how they're going to take their focus away from the football. I'm certain of that.
Do you have any tips, Robbie, on how to take your mind off football for the players?
To be honest with you, nowadays they'll just sit on their phone and play these games. I've got no idea what they're doing. They sit in the dressing room and they're all sitting on their phone individually, but they're actually playing a game together. So yeah, the world's moved on from playing cards at night.
Get the Scrabble out. Well, finally, let's have a look at the big domestic news. One of the big stories coming out yesterday, Kasper Schmeichel retiring through injury. Robbie, I wonder what you make of the way things ended with Celtic, because it seemed as though Celtic fans were learning about the details of his injury, not from the club and from alternative sources. And obviously looks like he's played his last game. It was kind of not a great end for him personally to his playing career. But do you think Celtic and him should have been more open about what was happening earlier?
Yeah, it was a very strange way it kind of happened. You know, I mean, he was on TV, I think, at the time as well, when he was speaking and talking about, you know, how that was his season done. So yeah, it was disappointing because he's obviously had a phenomenal career. You know, with Leicester winning the league, you know, Denmark, and then obviously winning trophies up in Scotland. So you'd expect it to have ended a little bit differently. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there was some internal issue, you know, some sort of communication issue internally. But you know, he's had a great career, and I think we would all agree that, you know, it was coming to the end anyway. You know, and I think that the injury, where it was one that, you know, it was, could he have get back? I don't know, but it seemed to be that the decision was made that he wouldn't play again. Who made that? I don't know. So yeah, it wasn't a fitting ending. You know, and both sides of the old firm, you have Tavernier as well, you know, and Schmeichel, both ending their seasons, you know, not the way you would probably like.
Joelle, you obviously retired on your own terms. I wonder if you can, I suppose, empathise with how difficult it must be to, I suppose, almost be told that you're probably not going to be able to play again no matter how much you want to.
Yeah, like you said, I was very fortunate to make the decision and retire from the game, opposed to, in Schmeichel's case, the game kind of retiring him at the end. So I can only imagine the emotions that he's feeling. But when you've got a player like him who's had such an amazing career, for it to end the way it did, with the messy dialogue, the kind of messy communications, the messages around the injury, and then ultimately not having an opportunity to kind of say bye to the fans properly on the pitch, get the adulation that I would have imagined he would have got. It's a shame, and I can't imagine to think how he's feeling, because I was one of the fortunate ones that was able to make that decision and make it on my terms. And Schmeichel and many other players across the game haven't been that fortunate. So yeah, it was, like Robbie said, strange, the messages, the communication, the dialogue, and it just didn't seem to really align. But ultimately, it's a player who's had a magnificent career that's not had the opportunity to kind of properly say bye to the game.
Well, elsewhere, Craig Gordon and Cammy Devlin are not on the list of players Hearts released saying they were leaving at the end of their contract. Cammy Devlin, I believe, has been offered a new deal. Hearts are waiting for an answer. Do you think, Robbie, Hearts are going to be able to hold on to Gordon and Devlin? And if so, I mean, do you think they'll want to keep them both for another year at least?
I think Craig Gordon, yes. Yeah, I think he'll be one that they'll try. You know, I think he's so well associated with the club. I don't know if he'll maybe look to progress maybe into some sort of coaching role, player coach, something like that, you know, or even in the background, you know, in the exec level. You know, I think Craig had always kind of thought about doing that side of things. Cammy Devlin, I think it'll be depending on what other offers he gets, and I would expect him to get some good ones, you know, whether it be in Europe, or there was talk of the MLS, you know, he could go there and probably earn a significant sum, more than Hearts could afford. So yeah, I think that Craig, yes, I think Devlin will be away, but I think that, you know, the one for me that was interesting was Beningame. You know, I know he's been kind of had a lot of injuries, but when he plays, Hearts play well, you know. So, but again, with the Jamestown Analytics, I know that, you know, they have a say on not just the recruitment but also the retention. So Whether they're flagging up differently, I don't know. But he was the one that I thought, I thought they'd have kept him.
Yeah, as you say with Jamestown Analytics, it'll be interesting to see what Hearts do recruitment-wise this summer. Finally, the break between the seasons seems to just keep getting shorter. The League Cup group stages, which were drawn yesterday, start the day after the last World Cup quarter-final. Robbie, what's that like? I mean, it feels like the football ends and then all of a sudden eyes are on next season and then all of a sudden we're back into next season. How did you as staff cope with that and how did the players cope with that?
Yeah, it can be very difficult. Actually, I think 2 weeks ago I saw that the new Saints were back down in Wales for their Champions League qualifier and they were still playing a season over in Belgium. So it's just continual now, isn't it? And it's part of the game. You get very little break. It used to be you would get 8-10 weeks off to recover. Now you're maybe 3 or 4 maximum. So, to be honest, I quite like it, because the games keep coming thick and fast. There's nothing worse than, for me anyway, like spending a summer with no football on the TV. This year we've got loads. So, yeah, it can be difficult as in, I don't think it this time of year it is. It's when, I always feel it's when you get to, November, December, when you start to feel a bit of fatigue from not having a break because, it's dark, it's rainy, there's no sunshine, so you really need this break to be fresh in the winter period. And that's where, if you don't get a break, you really have to manage the players throughout that period to give them a bit of freshness.
What about for you, Joelle? Because obviously you guys are going from playing pretty much 3 games a week to then wee bit of a summer break. We've got some women's internationals in there as well, and then you'll be having both eyes on next season soon enough as well.
Yeah, I think obviously, I think from a player's perspective, out with those international players, you can kind of get some sort of reset without taking it too long, because I think the game's evolved so much now that as a player, you probably can't take longer than those 2 to 3 weeks maximum in the off season, because you want to hit the kind of front foot come pre-season. But certainly from a kind of staff, from a head coach perspective now, it just seems to be constant, thinking about the off season, pre-season and next season, even before last season was finished. So it's that constant kind of cycle and evolution of what are we doing now, but what do we need to be thinking of that's coming up, and all the preparation and planning that goes into it. So yeah, I've seen both sides of it now. Probably preferred it as a player because did seem to have a little bit more time on my hands, but yeah, enjoying the planning and all that going into pre-season and next season's preparation. So yeah, for me it's completely different but enjoyable nonetheless.
Well, that is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Joelle and Robbie, and thank you for listening. Remember, we are here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.
Sir Alex Ferguson is the most successful British manager of all time.
Nobody is above him or this football club.
So how did an apprentice toolmaker from Glasgow become one of the most iconic figures in sporting history?
His strength of character, his determination, the fight in him.
He can be persuasive, he can be charming, he can be frightening.
I'm Kelly Cates, and this is Sporting Giants Sir Alex Ferguson.
I didn't want to feel, I couldn't feel.
Listen on BBC Sounds.